Hi, I'm Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning into the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Tustin, California at Joe's Garage. This is a wonderful collection of great cars owned by a gentleman named Joe MacPherson. Joe, come on out here.
Hi, Lance.
How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Great, great. What a, this is just awe-inspiring. It's one of the prettiest collections I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. We're proud of it.
Yeah. How did this come about?
Well, you know, for years I collected cars, and I used to keep them in warehouses where I could see them anytime I wanted them. And people used to bug me. They'd say, well, why don't you show your cars? And I said, why? You know. And we happened to have an occasion to build this storage garage. It was a 3-story parking garage. And when we did it, I looked at this bottom floor and I said, everybody's been wanting me to do this, I'll do it. So here we are, Joe's Garage.
Yeah, it's a perfect space for it. And we've been trying to get in this place for a couple of years, and our schedules didn't quite mesh, and finally they clicked. So we're real happy to be here. Would you take me around, just show me some of the cars that you have here?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay. Joe, one of the things that's really impressive about this collection is you have one of almost everything. Anything with 4 wheels on it you seem to have. And some of them are cars that go real fast. And here we have a Bonneville racer that you said did 200 miles an hour?
That's correct. This car was in Class B, C, set 3 different records at Bonneville. And at the time, this car was won the design, best design car. It was made, the front end here was made out of 2 40 Ford hoods.
Mm-hmm. Put together, sandwiched?
Put together,
uh-huh.
Yeah, sandwiched together. Art Chrisman was the gentleman that built the car and drove it.
Uh-huh.
And it's quite an experience to drive. The windshield sits right at your face, and the engine's right at your head.
You're tucked right up into here,
and
the engine's in the back. What is the engine on this?
It was a Chrysler at the time. Currently, it's a Ford flathead, but at the time it set the records, it was a Chrysler.
Mm-hmm. How were you lucky enough to acquire this?
I wrote the check.
Yeah, that's the easy way, yeah. That's great. Well, speaking of cars that go very fast, you have one over here that, what you said, does 230 miles an hour?
Well, we've got the Indy car that did 230. We also have a Grand National car, which is Winston Cup, that will do over 200 and some miles. We have a few cars in here that will have done right at 200 miles an hour.
Okay, let me take a vote from the viewers here. Everybody that wants to see the Indy car that did 230 miles an hour, raise your hand. Okay, and everybody that wants to, it's the NASCAR racer?
Yes.
Okay, everybody that wants to see the NASCAR, raise your hand. Oh man, it's close. Let's go look at the Indy car.
Okay.
All right. 230 miles an hour in this?
Yes. He finished 8th at Indy. It happened to be my son.
Jeff MacPherson, I see on the side there.
And on the back straightaway at Indy, they're doing about 230.
He's right there in the pack doing it with him.
Oh yeah. So.
An 8th in Indy, you must have been a pretty proud moment.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I raced myself, not in Indy cars, but off-road and with Jeff and all. And when I was in the car with him, it didn't bother me. But I hated watching him. It made me very nervous.
These Indy cars, the technology on them just changes so much from year to year. What year was this raced?
This was 87.
So since that time, they kind of still look the same, but technology-wise, they're a whole different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Different fiber. There's more carbon fiber. There's a lot of change. I would probably make a mistake if I tried to tell you some of the changes, but there are a lot.
And the motor in this now?
Yeah, this was a Cosworth engine.
Okay, so just specific Indy race, one thought in mind, get out there and win the race with this.
That's correct. And of course, it ran the whole series, which would be a series of about 14 races. So
well,
this was one. You have more than one car because
you break them.
They knew to break. Yes.
Yeah. I often ask the question on the show if somebody wants to get into the hobby or somebody, how do they do it? Well, if somebody wants to get into this, I guess the obvious answer is you find somebody with a whole lot of money to back you up.
I always tell people what you need is a magic pen.
Yeah.
You got a magic pen, you can have anything.
Just sign away. Okay.
Sign your check.
Okay. Well, we were talking about fast cars. You have another one right over here. Let's take a look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Dale Earnhardt, you have his car here. What an honor. How did that happen?
Well, it happened, we were looking to get a Winston Cup car, and Childress happened to have one of them for sale, so we called him and we obviously bought it. But that was when Dale was still alive.
Yeah, so do you have people come in here and see this car and it's like they're visiting Elvis's grave or Kennedy's grave or something, and they're just really set back by this or emotional about it?
Yeah, we have had an occasion, especially the gals, guys too, but where they've actually been in tears when they look at it, and they want to put a flower, put a hanky in the car, you know. No, please don't.
Yeah. So what are we looking at here? What is the car?
Well, this is a Lumina. They ran Luminas 1 to 2 years. I forget exactly, and most of the time it's a Monte Carlo that you'd see. They all have the Chevy small block, you know, and such as that.
And the kind of times at this turn, we're over 200 miles an hour easily in this, right?
Well, yeah, at big tracks, like at Talladega or something like that. That's why they put restrictor plates on these engines to slow them down a little bit.
Very, very cool car, Joe, 54 Corvette, and you were telling me earlier that you paid $300 for this car. Tell us the story.
Well, I was having a white 54 Corvette restored, and I was short parts. And a friend of mine called me up and he says, Joe, I have this car. I don't know if it's a whole car. I don't know what's missing. It's been in my garage for 10 years or more. It's in boxes. If you want it for $300, you can have it. So we went over, we bought them, looking for the parts. We got them, and the gentleman who was restoring the car at the time looked at it and he says, this is a better car than the one we're restoring. So we ended up restoring it.
That's fantastic. The color on this is a little bit different. So many of them were white, and was this a factory color on it?
Yes, they had white, turquoise, red, and black. Now, the turquoise, there was only a few of those. There was less of the red and black. In fact, I think either red or black, there might have only been one, but there was very few. The majority of them were white.
These were basically a 54 Chevrolet that with a different body dropped on them and a couple of carburetors put on the motor. And does it handle like a 54 Chevrolet, or did they do enough tweaking that you feel like you're driving something special?
Oh, it's better than just a standard car. It has the Chevrolet straight six-cylinder engine in this year. It was the 1955 before they put a V8 in them. And the suspension, though a little rough, it's sporty. Mm-hmm. And they were very popular at the time. America's first sports car.
Right. Well, there's a truck over here that is very much like a truck that I used to own. So when I walked in here, I looked like I had an old friend waiting for me. Can we take a look at that?
Why not?
All right. Joe, I used to own a beautiful 1970 Chev pickup truck that was a bright yellow just like this. It was very, very nice, but didn't come close to this one. This is maybe the finest C10 bodied Chev truck I've ever seen. This is something.
Well, thank you. This is an interesting truck. This was a study of trying to do something a little bit different. For example, we took the front fenders and we drooped them. I know it's cut a section and caused them to go down. Then we took a tapered cut out of the hood so that it would also have that down look. And as you can see, the grill is modified. It's a handmade grill. Then we took the top off and we laid the front windshield post back and took the back and brought it forward, then reset the top to it. It gave it the effect of being chopped, but in reality it wasn't.
You kept the same headroom, but it makes it sleek.
Right, and as you can see, the door handles have been done differently. In fact, recently Chevrolet has come out with the that fancy old style truck, and they have that particular type door handle on it.
The SST, yeah.
Now this has dual rear wheels, which is unique, and they're flush sided.
Dual, like two on each side.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Makes for four.
Yeah.
And then it has shocks with separate reservoirs. We got that from our off-road days. It keeps the shock cooler longer. Mm-hmm. And then it has the set screws for the suspension like you have in your Winston Cup cars. It has that in the bed.
And a 502 in the motor.
Oh yeah, 502.
The 502 is striking in there. It looks as good as it performs, I'm sure, but something kind of simple but really exotic is the wheel well covers on it, the brushed metal.
Yeah, we took and hand sanded. They're aluminum, and they were hand sanded, and they looked so good. We just decided to not paint them and shot them with clear.
And it ties in with inside the bed too. You did
yes.
The same thing. The interior on this looks like a new Lexus or something. It's pretty fancy in there.
Well, basically it's what you customized front seat for a car that we'd normally do. It's pretty much standard.
I suspect you don't use this for running down to the Napa store and picking up parts.
Well, believe it or not, we finished this car, and approximately within the first week that it was finished, we joined the hot rod run from San Bernardino, California, to Panama City, Florida. And we drove this truck. It never missed a beat. And I'll tell you the thing that really surprised us is that we were on bad roads some of the time. There'd be big trucks with rocks, and we did not get one chip in the paint or the windshield. And I was holding my breath for 3,000 miles. But it came out beautiful.
You have a car here that if you had to drive any distance in that particular car, you better be pretty darn tough, I think. Let's take a look at that.
Oh.
A 1928 Bugatti. This perhaps is the most special car, most loved car you have in your collection?
People ask me all the time, what do you think about your cars? And which one is your favorite? And I say, it's like your kids. There's never a favorite. You like them all. But I have to be honest, I've always wanted, and when I finally got a Bugatti, yeah, that's my favorite.
This was a car that was made for the sophisticated gentleman that wanted to do a little fast driving around the countryside?
No, it was a full-on race car.
Full race car.
In Europe, they raced in this country also, but in Europe, they're the forerunner of the Formula One. And they used to run at Monaco, and they ran at a few other places. I can't pronounce the name properly.
The power plant on this, what do you have for a motor?
It's a supercharged four-cylinder.
I noticed something very distinctive about this, and I know what it's for, but it may be new to some of the viewers, where you have the wires everywhere on this between the bolts. Why would they do that?
Well, the purpose of the wires, it turns one way through one side and the reverse with the other side. And if the bolts start to loosen, they get held tight. It's to keep them from coming loose. These cars did vibrate a little bit, and you'd lose a bolt or something like that, could lose a race. So they safety wired all the bolts on the car.
Was that something common back then? Because Bugattis are the only ones I remember doing that. Did other race cars do it?
Well, you know, I'm sure they did, but I'm with you. It's the first time I ever saw it. I mean, on a race car.
The story I've heard is Mr. Bugatti would not sell you one of his cars until you had a meal with him, and he wanted to see if you were refined enough, what your table manners were like, and if you if you met his criteria, then he would sell you a car.
I've never heard that, but it sounds good.
Yeah, it does sound good. Well, back here we have another race car, a Miller. Let's take a look at that. Joe, this feels pretty good fit.
Oh, you look good in there.
Yeah. Tell us about this 1935 Miller.
Okay. In 1935, Henry Ford's son, who later became the head of Ford, contracted to have 10 Millers built. Well, they didn't get them all done. They only got 5 of them done. And they didn't do well because the steering box was too close to the exhaust and it burned all the grease out, so they all froze up. When Henry was embarrassed and very upset, so he pulled all the cars and wasn't going to allow them out again because he just, Ford was a big racer in those days. But there was a gentleman who sold parts out of Novi, Michigan. He sold this one to him. It was a front-wheel drive. And you might have heard, if you've been around racing much, Novis. This is considered the first Novi. It came out of Novi, Michigan, and it was front-wheel drive. And all of the rest of the Novis were front-wheel drive that raced all the years afterwards.
But prior to the Novi, this was one of the 10 cars that Henry Ford had built?
Had a Winfield Ford V8 engine in it.
Do you know if this is one of them that raced in the race that got pulled out?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. So what kind of top end would this do before the steering box froze up?
Oh, these were probably 105, maybe a little more.
Yeah, in 1935 with no safety features, no roll bar, nothing. It feels good.
This side up, it does.
Yeah. I'm not a real expert on motorcycles, so this is really interesting, but I don't know what year it is, and it says Henderson on the side and Excelsior in the front. So what do we have here?
We have a Henderson Excelsior bike. It's a 4-cylinder. It's a police bike. The police liked the 4-cylinders. They liked the Indians and the Harleys because they could take off in 3rd gear and pursue somebody. Didn't have to go all the way through the shifting. Interesting about this is 1928. It has a speedometer that has a little switch here, and if he taps that switch, it will go up and clock you at the speed you're going, and if he hits the button on the side, it locks in. So he could pull you over and give you a ticket and have proof of what your speed was. And this is 1928. It always amazes me, some of the things that we find on these bikes and cars. Way back, we think a lot of stuff is newer than it is. So it has electric, it has a little dash light so you can see the speedometer.
So there was no arguing. He could just say, you know, look here, this is what you were doing. It's amazing, like you just said, that something low-tech is no less efficient than what we have now. Now, back in the 50s and 60s, when my crowd was building stuff like this, or at least started with cars that were like this when it was new, and people would call them a jalopy as an insult, but this meaning no insult, this is a jalopy.
That's right, and that was the category of racing, and many good racers came up out of jalopies. Now generally a jalopy was owned by a gas station or a body shop, and they're very crude. The welds were rough, and it was just spare parts, whatever they could put together. But they did a great job of racing. When I went to get a jalopy for the collection, it was one of the hardest cars I could find because everybody either restored them too nice, they weren't like they were, or they were gone. They were just gone. And I happened to be lucky to find a couple of young guys in Indiana who had this one, and they used to drive it to car shows, and they just had a ball driving it around. But this is a true jalopy.
When I think of this, I think of the old footage I've seen of these going around dirt tracks and just going sideways and dirt flying everywhere and up and over each other and going into the ditch on the side. This was it took some courage to drive one of these, I think.
Well, I think they were pretty safe. You know, but I mean, yeah, it always takes courage to drive a race car. I don't care what it is. And most racers, if you know them, they'll race anything. I mean, Dan Gurney used to get more tickets than anybody just taking the mail to the post office. You know, he couldn't stand not racing people. But
well, this has a flathead motor in it. As far as you know, what 60 horse, 80 horse?
Well, most of these are probably about over 100 horse, but because they've been worked on. They started out at 85.
Well, it's a beautiful car. It's a beautiful collection, Joe. Really impressive. Thank you very much for letting us come in here today.
My pleasure.
It's very impressive. So if somebody wants to visit Joe's garage, how do they go about it?
Well, first they get in contact. We do have a website that they can go to, Joe's Garage, and or they can write to us here in Tustin, and 36 Auto Center Drive, and we'd be more than happy to send them a brochure.
Yeah. Well, if you look right there on the screen, amazingly enough, there's your website address, and there's the address, and everything right there on the screen in front of us.
Modern things are wonderful.
Yeah. So people can come out here, look at the collection, use this for parties or whatever they want.
That's correct. We have banquets, bar mitzvahs, weddings, memorials, high school proms. Believe it or not, we get 1,000 kids in here for a high school prom.
Wow. Well, if you know of 1,000 kids looking for a place to hang out on a Friday or Saturday night, come out to Joe's Garage. Joe, thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching the show. If it wasn't for the viewers, there would be no show. Thank you very much, and we will see you again next week. See you then. Bye-bye.